welcome to my live. So today I want to talk about fast fashion and the impact and also the responsibility of the consumer. Um, because I know that a lot of people want to just blame fast fashion brands, and while they are primarily the people who are the problem, I also want to emphasize that consumers also play a great part in the environmental impact of fast fashion and how sustainably, and we're talking about conversation of sustainable fashion and how it is not just a one um, fault party, it's two faults. One, the fact that fast fashion exists in such a way nowadays that the way that fast fashion is being consumed by consumers is a huge problem, and I don't think that enough people talk about how consumers are playing and being complicit in the conversation of sustainable fashion. So what can you really do if you want to be sustainable and you really want to treat the planet right, and you also care about fair wages, and you also want your clothes to last? Because I think that, yes, I personally do not like fast fashion, but I understand that there are people that have budgetary issues about buying higher price ticket items, right? And then how do you make both issues work, right? Because if you are lacking money and then you also need clothes, how do you make it work? So that's why I want to say that in my channel, I'm trying to talk about ways that you could, as a consumer, really like being very conscious about your practices of buying fashion. Whether it's fast fashion, high end fashion. Because overconsumption is the biggest issue. And the biggest issue is coming from consumers in this aspect. Because if you don't buy stuff with the intent of buying trends and consuming trends that might last you a year, at most 2 years, and it becomes dated, then the problem is once that style becomes dated, then you most likely discard it. And the sad fact is, a lot of people are using donations of their clothes that they don't wear as being guilt free of being over consuming fashion. And I really want to say, like, if you are using donations and thrifting, because the sad fact is right now, the way people are donating clothes is such a rate. People are donating where only 20% of the clothes currently, I think it's only 20%, and of the clothes that's donated is actually being recycled through into thrifting. And the way that people are thrifting nowadays, they don't understand that something is made of silk and something is made of polyester. When you look at the style of it, people don't understand that there's two different values of these clothes. Because when you are buying something in silk, in its first stage, it's better quality material, it's got better workmanship. But then through the thrifting and recycling, it gets treated the same way as fast fashion that's made out of polyester, and that's made of lower workmanship of the clothing item. So we really want to say, like, as a consumer, and I really want to talk today as a consumer, I really, if there's anything that I could get across on my channel, is if I can even make one person shop less, and really think about, what they're buying and how to create multiple outfits of it, and not just discarding the clothes that they buy at the end of the season because it's a trendy item and they can't figure out how to make it work into their personal style or their lifestyle, that they can wear it for multiple years. Because if you take care of your clothes, whether it's fast fashion or high-end fashion, it'll last you longer. So this is what I really want to encourage on my channel. And I know that a lot of people who follow me, really want to, learn this process. So that's why I always say, like, just don't buy just because, it's readily available. Because the thing about fast fashion is, you know, um, it's so accessible nowadays, and especially, a company like Shein, they are making things $5, $10, and the the another thing with the Boohoo with Khloe Kardashian, the fact that she was it Khloe or Courtney, the fact that she's doing this and she's saying that she's a sustainable ambassador and she has no experience with a brand that's selling, $5, $10 ticket items on clothing, that there is completely slave wages involved and the material is definitely inferior. And if it's not inferior, someone's not getting paid along the way. And it's not going to be her, it's not going to be the fashion brands, it's going to be the people who are sewing it, or the people who are making the textile, or even someone who's doing the shipping, So that's what you have to really consider in the whole cycle of production and how you're consuming fashion. So that's what I really want to emphasize. If you have any questions, feel free to drop in your comments, and I will do my best to answer you. Because I try to really educate, with my knowledge, being in fashion for 30 years for many, many brands. And I'm saying, when I say it's over 50 brands, I can say that I am almost at 100 brands I've worked with and consulted with throughout my career. So I see the ins and outs from, low end to high end fashion. So I know, what are the unethical practices and the not sustainable and greenwashing practices. And I really want to be very transparent about it, in a way that's not really, like, not doable for you as a consumer. Because that's how I really want to educate, as best as I can, is that if you don't consume fashion trends, I know that we all like, to see fashion, and we all like wearing fashion. But I also want to emphasize, just because we like it, we also have to be very conscious of the way we consume it. Does it fit our lifestyle? Are we gonna wear it for a long time? Are we gonna discard it? Because again, it's the impact overall as a whole, and how it impacts, the workers who make it and the environmental impact. And also, I know I get a lot of comments, saying, justifying that it's thrifting, and why I support thrifting to a certain point, and I know people don't like, when I say this. I do support thrifting when, you're finding things that are within your style aesthetic. You could see, like, you understand, the quality of the garment, right? And you're not just buying something because you're chasing after a fashion trend that someone has promoted through a haul, and you thought that, oh, since this person did it, they did it on the cheap, I might as well do it too, So that's the overconsumption the part about thrifting that I don't like. And the other part I don't like is taking away clothes, because I think there's another thing about thrifting that I don't like is some people have gone into plus sizing and buying plus size clothing because the in trend is oversized, and that's something I don't support. Because I think that some people, they really cannot afford fashion at the first hand or second hand stage. Their last resource is through thrifting to get like clothes to fit their lifestyle, because not all of us, yes, I understand not all of us have jobs that pay us good money, so I understand that. But also the flip side of it is, when you are supporting slave wages, whether it's through fashion or other industries, you're basically contributing to a vicious cycle of unfair wages, whether it's from the grocery store, whether it's people that who qualify as having low end jobs, and you have to understand that there are practices that we do as a whole that we really have to really think about, and that's why I really want to emphasize is, you know, when you are buying something, really think about it as a whole, and not just, because I know that, sh- yes, we see fashion and sometimes we think like, oh, this is a cute thing, I could wear it now because it's in. And I really want to discourage that. Again, it's the overconsumption and the fact that the whole idea that's very, very sad for me is that I see the landfills and I see the discarded waste. If you go through like any sustainable channels, whether it's on YouTube, TikTok, or any other thing, right? Other social media platforms, you see it. You see how much landfill right now is used up by this discarding fashion. They basically are just dumpster sites for overproduction of fashion, and people just need to be very, very self-conscious. It's like, do you really need it? And the other thing about thrifting that I don't like is I come from a time, because I came here as an immigrant, right? So I came from a time where within my community, we had hand-me-downs, and that's how we were able to get clothes. And I think like nowadays, because with thrifting and all the stuff like of recycling clothes and stuff like that, people are just like selling their clothes. No one's giving the clothes to the needy anymore, and that's really sad for me because as a kid, like I heavily relied on hand-me-downs, to get through, the year, my school year, and just having, clothes to wear that I outgrew, and usually like if things are still good, I will still, give, my hand-me-downs to someone else to use, and I think that there is this whole community when I came in like the 70s and 80s that we had a lot of hand-me-downs, and that was just a very common thing, within our community. But I don't know if that's a done thing anymore because I don't see anyone, doing hauls of hand-me-downs. I would love to see that, if anything, instead of fast fashion hauls or thrifting hauls. Because at the end of the day, the thing I don't like about hauls is it's just promoting the mindset of overconsumption, whether it's fast fashion, or thrifting, or even high end. I've seen also people do like high end, hauls. It's still at the end of the day overconsumption because it's promoting this idea of you need to get XYZ amount of pieces, and then you need to discard whatever was in your closet already, and then get the new thing in. And that's just like, where are you discarding it to? Because you think that you're donating it to, some cause. And I can tell you currently right now, the Salvation Army, even the churches, they are overwhelmed with a lot of people's, clothes that they don't want, from fast fashion. And they don't even know what to do with because it's such a bad condition. And if you see the amount, and really, if you really want to see, like, if you ever go to a Salvation Army and see the stuff that they don't take to put on the selling floor, you can see that it's a big problem, and yeah, and definitely overproduction is a problem, and I think a lot of people don't know how production works, and I know that on average, I could say that sometimes because brands have to meet, MOQs. So MOQs is minimum of quantity that a style so a fashion company has to make on a style to get, to use up all the goods. Because sometimes, the minimum to buy from the fabric mills is 1,000 yards minimum, right? Or sometimes it's 10,000 yards to get like a price break. So so fashion brands have to make a certain number of styles and pieces to use up all the goods, right? So when that happens, a lot of times that happens is that they are building on a premise of they have to have a sell-through of 70%. So only 70% of what they make. So imagine, 1,000 t-shirts that are made, right? And only 700 of it is considered, like the brand is making money. They have to sell through 700 of it, right? And 300 of it either goes on sale, gets, to a discounter, or gets discarded. So just think like 300 t-shirts on average, and just think about how many styles a brand, on the low end do. So if they do an average of 30 styles per season, and I'm just saying that that's not even average, I could say that in those kind of brands, they do an average a season of 50, 60 styles easily within like a week. So just imagine if it's that many styles and it's 300 that's left over. Just think about how much waste that is. So that's why I say that you as a consumer, you actively can now buy and or consume stuff, because again, there's so much left over, and not even just from used goods, even from first used goods, things that have not been worn yet, there are that percentage of it that's being discarded. And if you look at documentaries, and I will try to give some links to some documentaries to tell you what the stats are. It's jarring. And then once you see that, how much new clothes, new, not even worn, straight from the factory, because either brands not pay for it, or they made too much of it, or there was an issue with the style. All those clothes are being dumped into a landfill. So again, I really want to emphasize, like, just don't overconsume, because the less you buy and the less likely these companies who are doing these bad practices are likely to survive. And if you really want to be sustainable, we don't have to support, brands to do these kind of bad practices, But the fact that is the fact that, think about it. You could get a full made dress with a zipper for $15. That's the cost of lunch or dinner for some people, right? So think about, for cost of a meal, you could get a whole dress. And the fact that these dresses, sometimes people could just buy it to wear like 1 or 2 times, and then they discard it. That's bonkers to me, So I just really want to say, like, don't overconsume fashion just because it's readily available. And the less you consume and the more you think about, how to incorporate the things you buy into your personal style, the more likely that, these brands will have to rethink their practices. Because this is like the one little thing that I can do, is to drop these little things that you could change your shopping habits. Because you change your shopping habits and you consume less, right? Like, brands would not make more styles and more things if you don't buy into it, right? Because if they have leftover inventory end of the season, when they look at the reports, okay, they look and say, we did 100 styles, this season, and 30 styles did not sell, right? So then they have to cut back in the next season to produce less. So that's like a whole trickle-down effect kind of thing that you can do as a consumer, is to not buy so much just because it's available. And I know that there's a lot of people who make the comment in my comment section, say, like, that's the only thing I can afford, fast fashion. If you look at fast fashion, like, if you buy a Shein t-shirt, at, let's just say the t-shirt is $5. You buy 10 of them, right? In a season, because it's so cheap, right? That's $50. That's $50 you can spend on a better quality shirt that will last you longer, that you might want to wear longer, that you're not buying because of trend. And this is what I try to promote. And someone came to comment sections like, that's elitist. It's not elitist, to be thinking about the planet, and not and thinking about how people need to be paid fair wages. We know what's elitist is to think that, oh, I can't afford it, it's not my problem, that's elitist, because you're thinking only from your point of view, and what I'm thinking as a whole, for everyone to just have a practice that they, because you don't spend the money, right, and you consume less, then you're more likely to, have the money that you say that you don't have. And the fact that someone said like they have to save, like if you're saving for it, why not save a little more? And why not buy less? I didn't understand that comment. I kind of just had to laugh at it. Um, so anyway, yeah. Okay, so if you guys have any comments, feel free to drop them in, and I will do my best to answer. I'm gonna read some of your comments, and I will do my best to answer. Um, so totally agree, even from a design like, yes. Again, I don't encourage people to buy designer if it's not in the price range, but I just know that as a whole, from working in different tiers of markets and fashion, I know personally that there are practices instilled in higher fashion brands. There are labor laws that people have to adhere to. There are better materials generally, higher designer brands use, and they're better constructions, and people who are designer, the teams are small, so they are doing a lot more with their resources, because again, you know, um, my belief is that, and just based on my experience, is that usually like, I've worked in designers, usually like they pay fair wages, and if it's not something that if it's something that they don't pay for, it's usually a fault, and it really has to be a clear fault, and people just can't really like not pay, especially smaller brands. They have a lot less leverage than bigger brands. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I will, if you have any more to add on that, I could expand on it more. Thrifting to upsell as vintage collectibles is a huge, yes. So this is one of my big issues also, is that I see a lot of people who go into thrifting and they buy a lot of stuff, and I know that they're buying to resell, as vintage. And really, like, when people are talking vintage, there is a terminology in the industry, like it has to be 20 years old before it's considered vintage, right? And people who are really like true vintage, they understand that, they see the value. And I think that this is the thing, like I have a lot of vintage pieces from the time that I started in fashion, over 30 years ago. So those are vintage pieces, that I still have, but the amount of times that people come and offer me like $10-$20, for a silk dress, for a designer silk dress, I'm like, no, I'm not gonna, because I rather give it to my nieces or give it to someone who will appreciate, that piece, than someone who wants it and don't see the value in it. Yes, overconsumption and yes. So we talked about overconsumption in production. Yes, okay, so if you follow me, you know that I talk about sustainability in my TikToks a lot, and I am like an avid believer in it, and I know that there are practices that are really truly sustainable, and there are practices that are greenwashing. And if you look at, so greenwashing is just basically a term that's just, you make it sound like you're being sustainable, but you're not really changing any practices. So that's why I say, like, when Shein gives, reports H&M and Zara, who are right now on top, like they're the three biggest, contributors of fast fashion, right? And they are the people who set, they're the problem childs of an unsustainable fashion, and yet they put out reports, right? That sounds really fantastic. But if you read the lines and you really see what they say, when they say, when H&M says like, we do a little, we do what little whatever something, I'm like, yeah, you do very little, because you can't do more of that to really be this business model where you can make money, so you do the bare minimum, just to say that you are being sustainable. And if you look at so what's interesting is, if you guys have Netflix and if you watch Hassan Minaj, he did one on fast fashion, which is very informational packed. And I know because a lot of you here on TikTok like to have things delivered to you in a very entertaining way. So he has one. John Oliver has also one in fast fashion. So if you want to kind of see something that's not like a documentary form, but it's very informational packed about fast fashion, you could start from there, because they do both of them do give very good advice and give facts about fast fashion and what the consumer's part is. So I suggest you check that out. And so consumerism is one of the main contributors to impact the environment in fashion. Yes. Because again, I've said this multiple times, that consumers have a part to play, and lots of people have come at me like, that I'm somehow escaping the fashion brand's responsibility. I'm not. I've called them out. Many things. I even call out Everlane being greenwashing a lot of their things. And then know people support Everlane, and I told you what my issue with Everlane is. So for me, like, I look at the fine print, when people put out sustainable reports, and I could read between the lines, what are they saying? Are they really saying that they're really sustainable, or are they just saying that there's metrics behind it, right? Are they giving like, here's a certified, environmental company, that says that we're sustainable, and here's a percentage of what we're doing, and here's when we say that we are sustainable. Here are 1, 2, 3, 4 things that we're doing right now that's being. So if you just say that we're doing what we can, but what is it that you're doing actually? I want to know what the doing part is, because if you're saying, yeah, like, I can say that I am doing more than some of these reports are saying, and I know production, so I know what they're saying is just basically, it's just marketing terms that makes it sound, because they have copywriters that write these lovely reports, and they sound lovely, don't get me wrong. I read them and I'm like, oh, that sounds great, and then I try to look for the metrics, and I'm like, where's the metrics? I don't see it. So that's why I always encourage people, like, when you are reading something, when someone says something, they have to state, let's just say, like, okay, I am doing this. Then I have to say, I'm doing this in this case, in this case, in this case. You have to cite examples to me and what you're doing, not just saying it, because everyone could give lip service, and I could say that these fashion brands are giving fabulous lip service, and I think, like, people who don't know, they hear it and they're like, yeah, I'm gonna support this, because it sounds lovely, but there's nothing to back it. There's no bones, so it's just like, it's gonna collapse. Okay, so exactly, or at least 5 pieces. So I am a huge supporter of being an alpha repeater. I think I've said it this multiple times, and if you can see, again, this duster that I'm wearing, you can see 2 of my TikToks I'm wearing this, and I'm wearing multiple times, so you can see that, like, when I say being an alpha repeater, it's not to wear the same thing over exactly the same way. It's just taking pieces, and styling differently. Because if you see my TikTok that I wore this as a dress, I wore this as a duster, and today I'm wearing it with an animal print camisole. So it's just like, you could have pieces and just create different outfits of this. That's why I always emphasize, like, be an alpha repeater by, when you are buying that one single item, think about how to create multiple looks with it, right? With what you already have. And not just buying it because someone's saying, because again, whether it's an influencer, a fashion brand, or an editorial, they're all getting paid. So you really have to think like, the person who is getting paid, the messages they're telling me, is it really an easy practice for me to sustain and like practice in my real life? Is it really practical for my real life? So that's what you need to do. Okay. Do you think that I don't know more since I can't say. So I know that in packaging, this is a huge issue. So there's compostable packages, plastic bags that do dispose, and I think that there's a life cycle in how many years they decompose. So regarding packaging, I can say that I'm not a huge fan of packaging, and I don't like unboxing videos. They drive me bananas because the amount of packaging and waste, with those packaging, especially at the designer and high tier, how much packaging is used. Sometimes, like I see, I'm just like, stop it. You're hurting my heart. With this packaging. But the other end is, I once saw a TikToker, a YouTuber did some kind of like mascara wand or something. It was like $1.99, and she wanted like the whole packaging for her unboxing. It drove bananas because it's $1.99 for that mascara wand, and she wanted like $10 worth basically of packaging so she could do an unboxing video. Yeah, so I'm not a huge fan of those kind of nonsense. They are sold to just okay. So again, like with packaging, I would prefer less packaging. I know that there's definitely products that need certain packaging, but again, because I came here as an immigrant and my parents have used the plastic containers until it was like grayed out, yellowed out, and it's always been this way. And so it's kind of weird when I see nowadays like the amount of packaging, like the people just take those plastic containers, discard it, they don't use it for anything else. And there's a lot of practices that I find people can do less of, but it's considered like not posh or not what full bougie people would do. And I just think like there's a lot of things, because I know that in New York City we don't have plastic bags given out anymore. We always carry our bags now when we go through shopping. But those plastic bags, the way I use those plastic bags is they get multiple use out of. So they get once when I buy something and then someone puts it in the plastic bag. I usually carry my lunch in the plastic bag, but beyond that, I use this plastic bag as garbage bag liners. So there's like multiple use out of it, and I think that that's what people need to think of, right? When they are talking about reusing, is to think about besides, it being like that single use thing. So I think like even if you see plastic bags and stuff like that, I think that it's a matter of thinking about what can you do to get a second use out of it. So in regards to climate change, modifying the typical season lines. I don't see that being hugely done in fashion yet. What's interesting is this is something I really like. Um, so Christopher Bailey, who was the previous creative director for Burberry, so he has started. I think in 2010 was when he did this thing. I could be wrong. It could be like a year or two off, but you could look it up on the internet. So he said because fashion is so global, and this is in 2010, so this is 12 years ago, right? So he said that because global fashion and social media has made fashion so accessible to everyone globally, and people are buying fashion different. So he said that he's making seasonless fashion. So he's presenting a fashion week differently. So you could buy the styles all year round, and I could see some of the aspects. It does work for Burberry's brand because Burberry has very um, timeless styles that are very classic. So that's a very interesting thing, and I wish more brands to do this stuff because I try to do with my fashion brand is I do capsules that are produced all year round, so you could buy it and um, because again, if you travel around the world like I have, you know that different parts of the world have different seasons. Not like here in the U.S. that you have seasons. Even in the U.S., like up here in the Northeast, we have the 4 seasons. But if you're in Southern California, I think you have only 2 seasons. It's hot summer and it's cool summer. That's it, right? And I know this because I have family out in California, and I also lived out in California, so I know that the seasons they don't really have unless you're really in Northern California in like Lake Tahoe, then you could get like snow. But if you are in Southern California, like San Diego, then you don't have it. So yeah, so I think like it's interesting to see like, how fashion is. Okay. So it's interesting to see how fashion can be seasonless, and I wish that more designers would design with the intent of seasonless and presenting smaller collections and presenting only 2 times a year instead of like 4 to 6 times or whatever they presented. Because if you go to Vogue Runway, I think that right now they are they're showing 2 main seasons on the runway, and they're doing like presentations. I think I'm not sure if it's 2 or 4 presentations throughout, and sometimes it doesn't get the Vogue runway. There's like multiple small seasons. I don't know. Like there's on average, I think right now the way the fashion calendar is broken down to deliveries, I think they're shipping 10 months out of the year now versus they used to ship out 8 months, I think. So anyway, I have to wrap up because I have to get lunch and then I also need to get back to work. So if you are interested in this, follow me, and then I will be doing live every Friday from noon to 12:30. So yeah, thank you for joining me, and I will see you next week. Bye.